Still looks pretty grim, eh? Even though we're into the rebuilding, there's still a long way to go. You know, there's lots of different priorities for the planning and rebuilding. Lots of different voices, from business concerns, community groups, SERA, social service agencies, the council, forced relocations. I wonder in all this what our distinctive voice as a church is. Where do we find the heart of the kingdom at work as we plan the next step? Even if you live out of the city, Timaru or a rural parish, you still have a stake in the city, and things in your community will no doubt still have changed. And Jesus said, I've come to bring good news to the poor, to bring freedom for the prisoner. And at least part of that good news is that the poor were no longer excluded. They were welcome as part of the community of God. They were no longer invisible. Part of being included means being heard. And Jesus did also say, the poor will always be with you, but that's just the point, isn't it? That's where they should be, with you. In disasters worldwide, the evidence is pretty clear. The mark of success of a rebuild like we're facing is whether the vulnerable and poor are better off or worse off as a result of the rebuild. Those that were doing okay before the earthquake, despite the heartache and grief, will by and large end out doing okay afterwards. But those who are in material or social poverty are often left out of the process. The gap between the haves and the have-nots often widens. In the inner city east, for example, there's a huge amount of social low-income housing, the single-room bedsits that people that are in and out of the city mission or Te Whare Oemata spend some time in before they're able to move on to other accommodation. And one of the fears is that if the inner city is rebuilt just to market values, then this whole group of people that access these services can no longer afford to live here. And they're all pushed further out east, further concentrating poverty out east and making the inner city far more exclusive. Or the elderly, a population that's often very vulnerable, to make sure that the city works in a way that functions for them. The speed for crossing a street, for example, the gap or the distance between park benches and public toilets and green spaces, all of the things that make the city work better for the vulnerable, that make it an inclusive place, are so often forgotten. So maybe this is one distinctive voice that we can bring to the table, to remind people that a mark of success of the rebuild is that the vulnerable are not worse off as a result, that the gap between the haves and the have-nots does not grow. Maybe a good measure for everything we do as a nation, but in our plans, to do things in a way that excludes the vulnerable would be a mark of our spiritual poverty. So whether it's in your comments on the rebuild, your response to the council's inner city plan, your own parish plans, or even your business plans, how are the vulnerable being included? Whose voice is missing in your plans? Hi, how's it going?
Good.
Good. So where did you say you guys were from?
Beacon.
Beacon. And what's going on?